coaches, welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach breakdown. This week we are taking a look at Chile's system in the Copa America. Classic 4-4-2 in possession. You rarely see that today, but they have done a couple of tweaks to modernise the system, to challenge our thinking perhaps in some limitations that the system has today. But a fluid attacking 4-4-2. What does it look like in the modern game? Chile showed us the other night. I'm going to look at three specific ways that they built out, three specific ways they attacked. If you enjoy it, please give it a like. Please subscribe. Please check out the resources on modernsoccercoach.com for more information. Here we go. Chile's 4-4-2. All right, first up, you do see 4-4-2 from a defensive standpoint. A lot of teams will press in a 4-4-2, but you rarely see it today from an attacking standpoint. And there's a few reasons why I believe that the flat 4-4-2 is not used as much today. The first reason is that central overload in midfield. You're playing two central midfielders. Most teams play three, sometimes four, with players dropping in there, inverting players. So you're giving up that space. It's very uncomfortable for coaches to do that. So that's probably the biggest piece from an attacking standpoint that you don't want to give up. Second of all, the 7s, 11s, the 2s and 3s can often find themselves in the same line, which can limit attack. So that can limit teams. And then the other one is that the shape is so expansive. The 4-4-2 can turn into a 4-2-4 from an attacking standpoint. And if it's so expansive, it puts big requirements on transitions. And again, it can expose teams when they lose the ball. So coaches may not want that. And with the width in that 4-2-4 picture, sometimes puts crossing situations as the priority. And in the modern game, not a lot of teams want to cross. They want to build with the numbers combination player in and around the box. So you don't see 4-4-2 used a lot today as it was years ago. But Chile did a few things in their organisation that can overcompensate for maybe those challenges in that traditional shape. Here they are. All right, Chile were pretty consistent with their back four and their two midfielders in terms of shape, but it's the movement around the front four that was very interesting. Initially, Gareca moved them very narrow, so they stay very narrow, but there's a lot of rotation high. So often they move the back four across and they overshift. And the first rotation between the 11, the 7, the 9, the 10 might open up a vertical pass if the opponent is unbalanced, but if not, they can then use that situation to overload, circulate possession, and because they've shifted across, they've moved the opponent and they've created a free player on the weak side. So the fullback is high in possession and is an outlet to use after the overload. Then once they break that initial pressure and the fullback is in possession, they can flood the central areas, that front four. We'll talk about that in a few minutes of other advantages, but when a fullback is driving forward and those four players are all positioned in between and around the penalty area, the width of the 18, it can be very difficult to defend against. Player profiles also play a massive role in teams being able to tweak systems at this level. The build-up shape with Bravo as a goalkeeper that can push two centre-backs a little further away creates a lot of unique opportunities as well. So split the centre-backs, you put the full-backs high, again 7s, 11s into those inside channels. You put the 6 and the 8 on different lines so that they ask questions of the opponent's press. Now they're building with a back three. You've got your two midfielders in support on different lines. But look at the problems that now presents for an opponent up high with those spaces all occupied, particularly with Bravo's passing range and also his vision, where we probably don't talk about this enough. A goalkeeper that has the vision to see the movement up a little bit further ahead, where he's got the ability to spot the extra player. If a player drops into that space and the defender doesn't go with them, Bravo can pick them out. The technique of his pass is also driven, so that ball arrives quicker. And now, because the ball is under control in that final third, you've also got fullbacks into the space, so you can create those wide opportunities, but not necessarily wide crossing opportunities from a traditional 4-4-2. Now these are box crosses because, again, of the width of the 18 and players occupying it, the fullbacks can support in and around that area, so they're closer proximity for crosses and better chance of creating goal-scoring opportunities. All right, the third and favourite part of the system for me on Friday night was the challenges that it caused the back three of Peru. which quickly then moved to a back five. So on paper, Peru's 3-5-2 should have been able to match up quite comfortably with their ability to apply pressure high and get that numerical advantage in the centre of midfield. But in practice, Chile's aggressive positioning high with those front four now asks questions of Peru's wing backs. Can they move up and leave 3v3 with an attacker on their shoulder? No, they've got to stay. So now their back three quickly becomes a back five. But that's only the start. This creates then the fullbacks as the outlets for Chile, as they're the free players, and then getting them in possession to break pressure allows them then to drive into space with the ball. So now they've got that wide progression as an outlet. Then that creates the situation in midfield where they can now manipulate. The number 6 in Peru now becomes overloaded with players dropping in, particularly on their weak side shoulders. You've got a forward dropping in the weak side, and they love this pass. The service from fullback into central forwards, number 9s, number 10s, dropping off lines, but receiving facing up, and the timing of that there was just unbelievable. So you create a situation when the ball's played in, the service is excellent. Now you have that attacker facing forward with support. That opens again with numbers on the edge of the box. That makes it really, really difficult for Peru to defend against. And on another day, they could have scored 2 or 3 goals, I think. So there you have it, coaches. Just some ideas around Chile's 4-4-2, their flat 4-4-2, the classic 4-4-2. I'm obviously really, really biased because I grew up with that system as a young player, learning the game, also watching the game. I was a Manchester United fan, not as much these days, but I was growing up. And when I was watching the game, you have the York Hole combination, you have the Sheringham Solskjaer combinations, you have these different combinations. Manchester United, the central midfielders, Keane Scholes, Keane Varane, whoever it was in there was really, really interesting. But the game has moved on. Manchester United moved on with that extra player in midfield, and it's become almost a necessity in the modern game today where you have to have minimum of 3 players in that central area. But Chile don't, and they're willing to give that up because of what it presents higher up the pitch, and that's what I find so interesting. I love football that's presented a little bit differently today, and Chile, there's a high level of technique and quality of player to be able to do 4-2-4 almost with those inside channels occupied. So there's a lot of quality individually, but I think from a coaching standpoint, and again, I would encourage everyone to watch Chile's next couple of games. It's going to be fascinating, especially against Argentina, to see what they do in those scenarios and see how other teams play against it. But the biggest thing I would look at when I'm watching the system as an attacker or from an attack appreciation would be that when Chile centre-backs have the ball, have a look at the movement in those front 4 players. Have a look that when one goes forward, another one checks back. Have a look at the relationships and the timing between the movement. And to me, that's training, that's practice, that's understanding, that's relationship, that's worked upon. So again, when you're looking at systems that intrigue you and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes in terms of game models and analysis and how they're coaching it, so you don't really know at the highest level what's player characteristics and what coaches are implementing. But what helps me understand that is the timing, is when players are receiving and the ball's played in right on time and they're not occupying space and they're waiting for the ball. And that's the biggest thing for me with Chile with that 4-4-2. Really, really fun to watch, really interesting. Again, they didn't score any goals. They drew the game 0-0. I'm sure people will say, well, it's not that effective if they didn't win the match, but it's just something completely different. And again, I love football being played a little bit different and football challenging us, coaches challenging us to think about football a little bit differently. You don't have to play 3 midfielders. Jamaica last night pressed with 2 central midfielders and a front 3. So they weren't going to match up 3 for 3, but they found solutions to it as well. So is that the way the game is going? I hope so. I hope there's more variation in shapes. I hope there's more variation in how people are presenting certain pictures, because there's so much flexibility with that, and it engages discussions around variety rather than 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, everyone playing against each other, similar game models, etc., etc. So I really enjoyed it. Again, I can't wait to see what happens for the rest of the tournament. But I thought I'd put up a little report. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you want more of these Copa America reports, please give it a like, please subscribe, and if there's a game I need to be watching and a system I need to be looking at that's a little bit different, please put it in the comments below and I'll definitely take a look. Thank you so much for the support. I will see you next week. Goodbye.